So this experiment, right? So the few things you have here, right? So you have plastic bottle, right? And then you have balloon, right? So you got balloons here, right? And then you got containers. So you got two containers over here, right? And you have 500 ml of cold water, right? So I'm actually going to start fill up one of the containers with cold water. Okay, so then the other one will be to boil, right? So I got a kettle here. Right, so this will be the one where it's cold water, and then I'm going to put hot water over here. Right, so while I'm waiting for the water to boil, right, what I'm going to do is actually to just put the balloons on each bottle, right? So I'll use two equivalent bottles, right? And for each bottle, I'll put a balloon on it, right? So that I'm just following the instructions on the sheet, right? And so far, all of you can see the container, right? So this is cold and this will be hot water, okay? Before I start adding the hot water, right, I will go on to draw the diagram of what I'm trying to achieve first, right? So as you can see, the water is already boiling, right? So what's going to happen, right, is that I will draw, you have one where on this side will be cold water and hot water, right? So cold water is here and hot water, right? So, and then there'll be water, and then there'll be a bottle, right? So now I have two bottles that are equal and both have a balloon on it, right? So I'll put each one in the cold water and one in the hot water, right? So let's try, okay, and see what happens to the balloons. Okay. Right. So I think y'all can see here as well, right? The balloon here expanded, right? Inflated. The balloon here didn't expand. Okay, so from here, what you will observe is that the balloon here expanded. The balloon with the cold water did not expand. So when the observation, right, when you had the 500 ml of cold water, when you put the balloon, right, with the cold water, which is this, right, the balloon did not, that the balloon did not inflate, right? And for the one with the 500 ml of boiling water, the balloon inflated, right? So this will be the observation, right, that you have made so far, right? So we're just going to draw what happened, right? So just now the one, the green balloon, right, was the one in the hot water, right? So you drew the green balloon, right, and then it expanded, right? And the cold water, which had the orange balloon, which is in red, it did not expand, right? So you can just draw a deflated one, right? Okay. Okay, so this really is the, yeah, this will be the experiment for today. Right, so what we're going to do will be to actually just go through the process of the entire experiment, right? So gathering the results, determining whether it's reliable, among other things, okay? So we go to the next one. Okay, so independent variable. So what do you think is the change variable in this experiment? Right, so in the change variable, there are two possible ways you can write it, right? So the first one, which is the more straightforward and I prefer, will be the temperature of water, right? And the second type will be the presence of boiling water, right? So both will be acceptable, but I slightly prefer the first answer. Okay, so presence means that you have or don't have, right? Temperature of water will be, one is boiling and the other one is room temperature, right? So there are two possible independent variables that you can write, right? And both are acceptable, right? So the dependent variable, which is your measured variable, right? So what do you think is, what is the measured variable for this question? Okay, so the measured variable will be whether the balloon, okay, so again, there's also two possible answers. So whether the balloon inflates or size of balloon after 1 minute, right? Right. Okay, so we go on to control variables. So what do you think are kept constant during the experiment? I will just go through the list of all the variables that were being controlled, right? So when I was doing the experiment, right, the material of the bottle, right, size of balloon, right, the amount of water in each container, right, the size of the container as well, right? Okay, so these are the few things. Of course, the list can go on, but these are some of the more important variables that are being controlled in the experiment, right? So once that we are done with this, we'll go through the entire process, right, from the start to end. Right, so at the start of the experiment, when we're designing it and setting up the experiment, we were discussing what we are trying to get out of the experiment, right? So the aim of the experiment, right? So the question that we would have wanted to ask will be, what is the aim? Okay, so the aim of experiment, right, was to find out, right? So it was to find out something. Right, so this will be your change variable and measured variable. Right, so the temperature of the water will be your change variable, and your size of the balloon will be your measured variable. So the next one is to determine relationship, right? So relationship in this case is given to you. It's not what you're trying to do in determining a relationship is your conclusion. So, right, so the next question asked would have been, what is the relationship between the temperature of water and the size of the balloon, right? So again, you just put the writing structure here. So as the CV increases, right, the next page, so reliability test. Right, so the reliability test would have been to suggest, right? So this will be the question that will be asked, right? So to suggest how the results of the experiment could be more reliable, right? So remember, reliable means that you need to repeat the experiment and get the same results, right? So in terms of the answer, right, it will be to repeat. Okay, so the next one will be a fair test question. Okay, for fair test, right, how can you can use any of the control variable, right? So the best, so I would prefer the most to use the amount of water, right, in each container, right? So in this case, this will be the question that we would like to address, right? So this is why fair test is to ensure only one CV in the experiment. Okay. So with that, we will go on to the next part, right, to answer the question. Okay, so what we're using the same amount of water ensure? What are you trying to ensure when you make sure the amount of water is the same? Okay, so the related concept, right, will be exposed surface area, right? So you want to make sure that the exposed surface area of each bottle in contact with the water is the same, right? This will be it, right? So you want to ensure that only the temperature of the water affects the size of the balloon and not any other variable. Okay, so conclusion, right? Then you just need to add what are the concepts you can use when you apply why the balloon inflates. So this is an application of the topic on heat. Right, so this will be the conclusion that you can make, right? So this is based on the results of the experiment. How do you apply it to concepts that you already know, right? So it is the topic of heat, right, and matter, right? So because there's heat, the air gains heat and expand, and then the increase in volume of air causes the balloon to inflate.